Help me out on the name of this episode of HTR, John.
Well, we discussed calling it estimating sucks.
Estimating sucks. Why would that be? Why is that so true?
I think estimating sucks if you don't have a process and you don't have a repeatable way of producing, those job costs. I think contractors can get very frustrated that, the time that it takes. I doubt any contractors became contractors so that they could do estimates. But again, if you do have a systematic way of putting those numbers together in a proposal or in an initial cost range or, however you do it, it can make it a lot less painful and a lot more consistent. I mean, every job that we do is different. Of course, we do remodeling, which is very different than doing spec building or, track building, commercial, whatever. But in all of those, you do have to do estimates. And like I said, every one of our jobs is different. So, we're starting from a different point. It might be a cosmetic remodel. It might be a full gut and redo. It might be moving walls. And if you don't have a way that you can, efficiently and accurately go through and put together those numbers, it's going to be infinitely frustrating.
Yes.
As well as not being able to go back and, do some, historical analysis so that you can improve.
Sure.
Over time.
So we're acknowledging, even with our tools, estimating is still difficult. And if you don't have all that together, then estimating will definitely suck.
It definitely will suck.
It definitely will suck. You mentioned the historical data utilization. I have a stat. RS means says that basically estimates using the historical data, or the time it takes to make those estimates, is reduced by about 30% across the board. And also the time it takes to do estimates electronically rather than manually, if you have like a platform, it reduces it by about 70%. Not that reduces it down by 100% in the end, but those are very telling stats that the system, having a system for the estimating can drastically reduce the time involved. What is the process where we reveal an estimate to a client, and why is it so expensive to spend time on it?
Our process really starts with, a phone call or an email, somebody reaching out to us, saying, hey, we have an idea, or we, want to make a change and we want to see what's possible. At least for us, more often than not, people have an idea, and that's kind of the extent of what it is. They don't, rarely do people, go out and start getting plans made and then trying to figure out how much it's going to cost. I think most people do, of course, the cost is the most important thing for them. Or, the end product is the most important thing, but how much it's going to cost to do that and how long it's going to take, those are equally as important. Because if it is more than, what they thought, they might have to put it off and save more money, or, change the scope or whatever. But anyway, so starting with that phone call, that email, reaching out to us, we do, a certain amount of qualifying of them, just like they're qualifying us. We don't do every type of project. We still do a lot of really small kind of repair type projects, but remodeling, additions, that's primarily what we do. So sometimes people will call, hey, I want to do a new construction. And we have done many of those in the past, but we did decide that the way that we're set up, we're just better at doing remodels. That being said, accessory dwelling units, garages, smaller structures, we certainly do a lot of those as well. But anyway, so finding out, what type of projects that person is doing, and then of course making sure that the time frame that they have, at least for us getting there, because if they need something done tomorrow, we almost can never, do that. So it's good to find that out on the front end. And then, of course, we send them some information about us and our process so that they are aware of that, before we arrive. And then we do an on-site consultation just to get a better sense of the structure, the scope, and, get pictures and measurements and all of that stuff. And then we come back, and actually I do, almost always, I'll do a sketch, on graph paper, paper and pencil. We do utilize, of course, a lot of, utilize a program where we can actually do, CAD type sketches, but we kind of reserve that for, later on in the process. So I'll do that initial sketch, and then that way, on the graph paper, it's, a bunch of little squares, and, those squares represent a square foot. So then we can literally add those things up. But the way that when we then put that into the program that we had developed, it has a lot of interlinked connections, so that when we, because there's a lot of moving parts, and one thing is connected to another, could be connected to another, and if you have to remember all of those connections, sometimes things can get lost. So when we were developing it, we really made sure that we would limit as much as possible forgetting things. And something I think we'll get into a little bit is underbidding or underestimating, and how that's really a vicious cycle. And so anyway, that's kind of our initial process. Then, of course, we send that out if they're interested, or that's, works within their budget and all that. Then we take those next steps. But that initial kind of on-site consultation, sketch and plan, and then, putting the numbers together, that's essentially, the process that we take. And we've gotten that to be, a very efficient process. And we do track, the time it takes for all of those things. And then that can, dictate how many of those a week we can do. Some people, might just do a couple a week, a couple a month. But, we do upwards of, 8 to 10 a week. And we just found that we just, the way that we're structured right now, we can't do more than that. So, sometimes people do have to wait. And it's not that, we want to put them off, but we also don't want to overwhelm the system and the people that we have in place.
Yeah. So we provide an initial number that's really based on our calculator, and it's accurate, but then reiterating through the estimate is actually part of the pre-build process, which Jeff talked about. And that sort of helps resolve that time issue, because in the pre-build process, people are paying for plans and the reiteration of their estimate, more or less. So
yes, absolutely. And you're right. When you were talking to Jeff about our preliminary building agreement, that's really kind of a threshold that we have, that, hey, somebody has expressed interest and they want to take that next step. Because, even doing the initial cost range that we do, like I said, it is very thorough. And, oftentimes with a, more complex remodel, there might be 80, 100, 120 inputs that are actually go into producing that initial cost range. So it's very thorough, but, really getting into, making selections, confirming the plan, because you can, moving a wall is not super complicated, but it's just, all the connections that can go into it. There might be, electrical, or very often there's electrical in the walls. There's, can be a heating and air return or a supply duct. There can be plumbing, load-bearing walls, so, and then you add on to that the drywall and the insulation and the millwork, the paint, all that stuff. So making sure that we're accounting for those things. And, sometimes people say, well, it's a little bit, maybe outside of my range, and, I'd like to look at, could we not move that wall, or can we move this other wall, or whatever. And so sometimes I think that homeowners and contractors can kind of get in this squirrel cage of just kind of going round and round and round to try to do that. But until you can really nail down like what that scope is, and then that's where, of course, the preliminary building agreement comes into play, because then you can really spend the time of making all those little tweaks, making sure you're still in line with the budget, But then you got to get into making the selections: what kind of tile, what kind of plumbing fixtures, even what kind of heating and air system. There's gas furnaces, there's heat pumps, there are mini splits. So it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it all takes time. So, but if you don't have that process, or if you don't have a thorough process, it can suck.
Yeah, one of the reasons we feel compelled to talk about this is because it's not only a problem we're solving for ourselves, but it's a problem we are trying to solve for other contractors through the How Much Guru platform. And that really came about because of the advantages you saw with our own system developing well. What does the Guru do for other contractors? And, how does that ease the estimating suckiness?
Well, again, it's just that system, that systematized way of going through it, and not forgetting stuff. Like I said, we could have just like a cosmetic bathroom remodel, and going through and accounting for, hey, we're going to have to demo this stuff. Are we going to reuse that toilet? Where is that going to go? Are we going to reuse a faucet, or are we going to move a faucet? So just really going literally line by line. And then you come to like the roofing section. Well, obviously you're not, not obviously, but if you're just doing a cosmetic bathroom remodel, you're probably not going to be touching the roof. So, you can certainly skip over, certain sections. And then being able to see, just with the click of the button, or clicking a button and being able to eliminate or just show the areas that have not been modified. And so that you can say, oh, well, actually we are going to be changing the boot, on the vent on the roof. So, hey, we need to account for that. So anyway.
Kind of funneling those mandatory decisions in a way that makes it easy. You're not picking through the spreadsheet, you're just touching the buttons and just making it work.
Yeah.
That is the dream. That's why we're still working on that. And, it has already shown a lot of promise. So, estimating doesn't have to suck.
It doesn't have to suck.
Well, cool. Thanks for talking about estimating. We'll definitely return to this topic, but we need to cover more of the process up to contract. So we'll be bringing on Steve soon to talk about making those selections. That's really what gives us the ability to get to a fixed price contract. So
that's right.
Cool.
Thank you.